Back in 2012, a 16-year-old girl was brutally raped in Steubenville, Ohio. Now, there were a number of football players on the Steubenville High School football team that were involved in this rape. Either they took part in it, or they were filming it, or taking pictures of it as it occurred. Now, the reason why this story made national headlines was because no one faced any charges until Anonymous got involved and released and leaked information and basically pressured local authorities to get involved and finally do something about it. As a result, 2 football players from the Steubenville, Ohio football team did get convicted in this rape case. One of them was Trent Mays, who was sentenced to 2 years in juvenile detention. And the second person was Richmond, who was sentenced to 1 year in juvenile detention. Now, Richmond has served his time. He got out of the detention center. However, the Steubenville football team has decided that they are going to take him back and allow him to play as a wide receiver. I should note that he is on probation and he is considered a Tier 2 sex offender who has to re-register for the next 20 years. So there is obviously controversy regarding this. Should he be allowed to play football again, especially given the context of the story, and especially given the context that the administrators at the school didn't want to press charges even when they had evidence that this rape occurred. They had images, they had video, and the girl was severely bullied after the rape took place.
So he was convicted of rape. That's pretty serious, obviously, and it's not an open question anymore because he was convicted. Now, he is a juvenile, so that makes it a little bit different, but 1 year seems a pretty light sentence for rape. If he was an adult, it'd be an insanely light sentence for rape. But okay, so he comes out. Now, one side would say, look, he did his time, whatever it was, right or wrong, that's the jury convicted him, and then this is the sentence that he got, or the system convicted him. And once he served his sentence, of course, he can go back to doing whatever he can do as a free person, and among that is play high school. The other side of the equation says, well, look, you can get thrown off the high school football team for a million things, right? Cursing sometimes.
Your grades aren't good enough.
Right. Smoking pot will definitely get you kicked off the team in most areas, right? And by the way, it of course depends on how good a player you are, right? You would think a rape conviction might do the job, right?
Yep. I think it's beyond ridiculous that they're allowing him to play again. And you have to look into the entire context of the story. One of the big problems with this story was the fact that the administrators, the teachers, the authorities in the area refused to do anything about this rape, even though they had evidence of it, because all they care about in this area is this particular football team. They didn't want to stir the pot. They didn't want to get rid of their best players. To them, that game was more important than justice, which is crazy to me. And they knew that this girl who had been raped and who had all of these pictures circling around the internet was being bullied, and they still didn't want to do anything about it, right? So let's talk about the legality of this. It's totally legal for them to put him back on the football team, okay? So there's no question about that. But if we're going to have a debate about ethics, this is beyond unethical. And if you want more evidence as to why it's unethical, look at how they freaking brushed this story under the rug, the authorities in the area. So if they want to save face at all, this is a really bad idea. In May, Steubenville Superintendent Michael McVeigh, 51, was charged with felony counts of tampering with evidence and obstructing justice, and misdemeanor counts of falsification and obstructing official business in relation to the case. So they would rather tamper with evidence to make sure that these guys can continue playing football on their beloved football team. That's more important to them. It's unbelievable.
How about protecting the girl? I mean, did that never cross their minds? Volunteer football coach Matt Bellardine was sentenced to 10 days in jail for 1 count of making a false statement and 1 count of enabling underage drinking. His house was the scene of the underage drinking party that preceded the incident. And that's according to the Huffington Post. And in April, wrestling coach Seth Fluharty was ordered to perform 20 hours of community service as punishment for failing to report the rape. So you see a culture here that's clearly covering up for the guy. He must be a good player, too, because they wanted to cover up for him in the first place. This is what they do for stars. Come on, man. After a rape conviction, I mean, first of all, in the beginning, if you thought he was innocent, you wouldn't have to cover up, right? Okay, they do the cover up. They get in trouble for it. He goes to jail. Now he's got the conviction, and you're still going to put him back on the team? You're crazy. You're crazy.
It's beyond crazy. And look, If anything, it's a bad idea because it just reinforces the notion that you cared about the football team more than a victim of a brutal rape. That's it.
Now, is there an argument to be made that he served the time? JR, what's your take on that?
Well, I remember I was mentioning that before. There's the thing, and we're talking legally, and I think we brought that part in. Sure, they can allow him back on team legally, but as we're saying, it's one of those things where maybe he can play somewhere else. You got to get the hell out of town, kid. There's plenty of women, girls, let's say, who end up in these situations, and they literally get run out of town. Like they're the bad guy.
This woman continues to be harassed.
Yeah, they get run out of town. And so that's when the perception has to change. So I don't think, I mean, we can first argue the sentence, but if we get by that and he served time, there's nothing legally people can do, but there should be some kind of sentiment in the community. Like,
absolutely.
This guy's coming back to school here?
It
He
sends
should be
a
expelled.
message.
And obviously we see this superintendent, whoever made the decision to cover up and he got those charges, he shouldn't work in education anymore. It's obviously irresponsible. So that guy, I think, can be taken out, and the student should just simply be too embarrassed or too much of an outcast in the community to even come back.
See, that's
play
really
somewhere else. Or, I mean, if you go to college, hey, start your new life and play college in Southeast Iowa State, somewhere.
Right. So that's a really good point by Jerry, because look, I don't want this guy to be like, he did do his time. So we don't have to follow him around with a pitchfork the rest of his life, right? But I mean, if you don't get expelled for this, what are you going to get expelled for? Do you get expelled for murder? I don't know. Like, yeah, and that, if you get expelled, doesn't mean you can't ever go back to school. But you can't go back to this school. I mean, I don't know if the victim's still at the school.
No, she's not. She was actually from a different area, so she's not even living in that town.
Right.
Yeah.
So now I know it's not a slight burden on his family to have to move, and I don't know what their financial situation is. But at the same time, yeah, I mean, you got to get expelled, let alone back on the football team. But look, hey, we're gonna do a poll on this because you guys often surprise us. You surprised us on the Tony Stewart poll with the number of people who said no, he wasn't at fault at all. It was a very high percentage who said that. So we're asking in this case, should he be allowed back on the Steubenville football team?
Right,
Okay,
and there are two options, yes or no. If you want to participate in the poll, all you have to do is go to tytnetwork.com/Malik Richmond poll. It's also featured on the front page of our website, tytnetwork.com. Check it out.
And so the link is also below if you're watching on YouTube in the description box.